The 2023 NFL Draft is a week away, so it's time to talk some hot takes by a couple of hot dudes on the Fired Up NFL Draft podcast.
You're listening to the Fired Up Podcast Network. Let's get fired up.
And I'm your host, Brian Lamb, joined as always by Sean Balzer. What's up, Sean?
What's up, Brian? Excited to get into some takes.
Yep, 2023 NFL Draft. It's a week away. Should be a lot of fun. There's a lot of rumors out there, a lot of things on Twitter, social media, everything about some hot takes. So let's dive into them.
Right, everybody likes to fire off some hot takes on Twitter, so I figured let's get some here on video.
Let's do it. First one, you're up. Deonte Banks over Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, I know I'm slighting you a bit. I know you're a big Joey Porter guy. I do like Joey Porter. I don't want to slight him too much. I do feel, however, that he's been sliding down boards a bit here lately. There's the narrative that a corner from Penn State has never been drafted in the first round. That'll change this year. Joey Porter's going to be a first round pick, and I think he'll be a fine first round pick for somebody. However, I do think it's going to be probably in the 20s, and I do think that Deonte Banks is let's say floor would be maybe 22. Went to Maryland, out of Maryland, definitely an easy connection there to the Ravens. But check this list of teams that he's visited with. Let me make sure I don't miss any other than the Ravens: the Bills, the Saints, the Commanders, the Titans, the Vikings, the Raiders, the Texans, the Giants, the Bucks, the Eagles, the Jaguars, the Bears, and the Steelers. These are top 30 visits. All right, so at least half the league is interested in this guy. I think we as a draft community were maybe too low on him to start with, and we've seen him kind of rise here lately. So I could see him go in the mid-teens or so. I think the floor is 22. Again, I like Joey Porter. I don't want to sound too negative on him. I could certainly see the Steelers taking him because of his father. And the fact that they need a cornerback, but I think he ends up falling a little bit more towards the mid-20s or so.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Deonte Banks, obviously had a great showing at the Combine. His relative athletic score was, a 10?
I believe it was a 10. He didn't do any agility drills, so he may have known something there, but it was either a 9.9 or a 10, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just a hell of a performance there and showing, and that's what teams are looking at. So you talk about, a corner who's just all around athletic. I don't know what the 40 time was offhand.
It was 4.36. I think that's when people's eyes started to open up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, that's it's about what I ran in high school as well.
Right.
So, I mean, he's the speed's there. So, I mean, that's a nice number. And the 10-yard split was a 149. So even that's one of the fastest times for that as well.
Elite numbers, no doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to Joey Porter Jr., I love him too. I'd love to see him kind of press more and be more efficient with his hands. And I think sometimes when he's beat, he relies on just grabbing the opponent.
Yeah.
To stay with him. So I just want to see him kind of be able to stay with the receiver, engaged with him without laboring too hard. And, I think right now, based off of that game film, that's difficult for him to do. Moving on, I am up for hot take number 2 by two hot guys. Hendon Hooker is a franchise quarterback. And, I know that on most boards, he's QB5. He's QB5 on my board as well. But I think if you look at that knee injury that has him out right now, hasn't been able to go through any of the pre-draft process. Still able to meet with teams, but that's kind of it. He hasn't didn't do anything at the combine. Even at the Senior Bowl, he was there in meeting with teams. So he's at least participating, but hasn't really been able to show anything that these other guys have been. But, we've seen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, these other quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes. You can cater an offense around a quarterback and a quarterback that can make plays. And that's Hendon Hooker. I do want to see him, his accuracy sometimes can be a little spotty, inside and outside of the pocket. I'd love to see him clean that up. Obviously I think he's going to take a year off, as a, sort of red shirt, given the injury.
I think you have to draft him thinking that, right? Like, I think that he'll be okay from the injury around week 1 or so. One of the biggest hits on him is this so-called gimmicky offense from Tennessee. And while there's some truth to that, and he's going to take time, he's not Will Levis in that he's not prepared for a pro style system, right? So that is going to take time. So if you can consider that first year somewhat of a red shirt, but I don't think it's purely medical red shirt. I do think, injury wise, he'll be capable near week 1. It's getting him to, into the playbook and understanding the pro style a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at what would probably is likely to happen in the NFL, is that during, OTAs and rookie minicamp, is he's probably not going to be a full participant, during that. So you're already starting, a little bit behind the 8 ball. Obviously we don't know where he's going to be drafted, but it's going to be a team that needs a quarterback. So maybe you have a veteran quarterback there. And I think the most likely option or outcome rather is you have a veteran quarterback that starts the season and maybe, halfway through at the bye week or, somewhere in there that you see that transition to Hooker, just to kind of, see what you get with him. But, I think that there's traits there that are things that you can build an offense around and that can win in the NFL. And some of the things that aren't so great, I think are, things that you can fix, and things that you can work on and that, a professional coach in the NFL, can take care of.
This is your hot take, but I've been tooting this horn all off season. If he doesn't tear the ACL, I think we all think he's QB3. I'm a Hendon Hooker guy for sure. I do think that the Senior Bowl part is significant, though. I don't know if he's the only one or if it's incredibly rare, but for a guy with a major injury to get an invite to the Senior Bowl, I think says a lot about interest in him around the league.
Yes. Also, when you have 2 senior quarterbacks that declined to participate, I mean, you have to find somebody. So, moving on, you are up with your spicy hot take. What is it?
Maybe the spiciest, right? So I think all offseason we've been talking about pretty much like the big 4 tight ends, right? Like, I think we started the offseason, Michael Mayer was the obvious tight end 1. I think lately people are considering Dalton Kincaid to maybe be the tight end 1 over him. Daniel Jeremiah is a big Dalton Kincaid guy. And then you've got Musgrave, who I know you're a big fan of. I believe he's your tight end 2. I like Musgrave as well. And then you've got Darnell Washington, who we've talked about before. He's a very large human. He's a great blocker. I don't know how I don't know what you expect out of him as a pass catcher. It's certainly not going to be a high volume thing. We'll see. So for me, there's room for this to be a big 5. And if we're doing spicy takes, I'm gonna go ahead and bump him all the way up to tight end 3. And I wanted to go higher, but I really like Dalton Kincaid, and Michael Mayer to me he's a slam dunk prospect. Maybe Laporta ends up being a better pass catcher. We'll see. But again, not that I'm basing all evaluations on relative athletic score, but another guy that absolutely crushed his athletic testing. He's definitely undersized for a tight end, 6'3", like 245. Hopefully he can put on a little weight, put on a little muscle, but absolutely elite. 40-yard dash in the 4.5s. The recone was a 6'9", which is again elite. This is just an incredible athlete. And where does he go? What college is he from? Iowa. Tight end university. George Kittle, T.J. Hawkinson, Noah Fant. I mean, I think if we're looking for a guy to jump up into that top 5 and maybe even the top 3, for me it would be Sam Laporta. Now I'm not saying he's going to be the third drafted, but I am saying that he's the third best tight end in this draft, and I think we'll feel that way after maybe about 2 years. So,
yeah, I mean he, measures in at 6'3" and 3'8", so he's the shortest tight end in this class. That's not great. I have him 5th on my board. I don't know. We've talked about this tight end class before, and I've compared it to 2018, where you just have guys that are really good in certain areas, and you really don't have a all-around complete tight end. So I think on draft day here in a week, I think we can see kind of all sorts of things happen. It wouldn't surprise me if he does come off the board third. It's certainly possible. But I think that would involve either Dalton Kincaid or Darnell Washington falling out of that top 3, which is just what I find unlikely.
Yeah. We'll see. These tight ends, it's an interesting class, right? These tight ends are very difficult to, they're difficult to scout, but they're difficult to determine how successful they are and how happy you are with the pick, right? If whoever takes Darnell Washington, I think you're valuing him as a plus blocker. If the average fan sees a tight end that's a plus blocker and maybe catches 30, 40 passes, they're not thinking of him as a star tight end necessarily. Rarely do the blocks get the highlights, right? So, it's going to take time for people to see this if it were to happen. But I do think we could, Mark Andrews was what, 5th round pick in that 2018 draft. This spicier take, Sam Laporta's Mark Andrews.
I'll give you that one. Moving on, there will be a late round gem at the wide receiver position. So by late round, we're talking day 3, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round. Just looking at guys that could fall into that range. Maybe A.T. Perry, Jaden Reed, Michael Wilson out of Stanford, Trey Palmer, Nebraska, Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia, Trey Tucker out of Cincinnati, Ronnie Bell, Michigan, Grant Dubose out of Charlotte. He was at the Senior Bowl and did. He was solid. I won't say that he did extremely well, but he was good. So even the wide receiver out of Princeton, you have these guys that have limited tape, and haven't played the same level of competition as others have. But yet, in given the opportunity, they've performed very well. So, I think that we can see one of these guys kind of have a long-term career in the NFL, and do really well. So, somebody like Jaden Reed, whose speed just constantly popped on the Zebra technology at the Senior Bowl, is somebody that I like. And Michael Wilson, who just play after play and rep after rep at the Senior Bowl, was able to separate from the defender and make these catches along the sidelines and show off his catch radius. I just think that somebody like that is going to be somebody that a GM is going to target.
I think you named all my favorite guys: Tank Dell, Jaden Reed, Bryce Ford Wheaton's probably my super late sleeper guy. We talked about him before. It's an absolute monster. Relative athletic score of 10. Needs some work for sure. Production was not there. He's a late round guy for a reason, but I'd like to see him get with a good wide receiver team. Maybe a late round pick for the Steelers would be interesting. Like to see if they could develop him. Absolutely with you on this take though. There's so many guys. It's not really a top heavy wide receiver draft. I wouldn't necessarily say it has depth, but there's so many of these guys that it feels like at least one of them is going to really pop and be a star at the next level at the NFL level.
Yeah, just looking at Bryce Ford Wheaton, and looking at his RAS, every one is green. His vertical is 41. Yes. His broad is 10.09. 6'4", 221. 40-yard dash was 438. 20-yard split was 255. 10-yard split was 154. The numbers are there. So it's yes. Hand size at 9, 375, arms at 33.5. Gives you a relative athletic score of a 10. So I think there's something for the wide receiver out of West Virginia there.
Yep. Shout out to Kent Lee Platt, does the relative athletic scores on Twitter. I think his handle is at MathBomb. He comped him to Andre Johnson, which is, I think, the size speed is right on.
Yep. Speaking of wide receivers, you're up with your next hot take.
So I'm still fighting this battle. I've been doing it all off season, and we got a week to go, and it's looking spicy if it happens, right? So the over/under on DraftKings right now is 3.5. I'm still willing to take that. Over 4.5 is the spicy part of this hot take, right? So I think we're all on board that Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison are first-round picks. I think most of us are on board that Zay Flowers and Quentin Johnson are first-round picks. There have been some mocks here lately with was it Kuiper, I want to say, that had Quentin out of the first round. That would shock me. I'm not even the biggest Quentin Johnson fan. When he was going in the 11-ish range early in the offseason, that kind of shocked me. Definitely am more of a Jaxon Smith-Njigba guy. Do think he'll go in the top 12 to 15 worst case. And he is more of a slot guy. We'll see if he can develop at the next level. They called Justin Jefferson just a slot guy too. And that was, he also had competition at the college level who happened to be Jamar Chase, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and next year's top wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. So there's some comparables there, but this take isn't about just him. It's about the top 5. So we've named 4, right? So I feel pretty good about those top 4. I don't think Quentin Johnson gets past, I want to say Dallas, because he's the type of receiver they look for. It'd be shocking to see him get past the Chiefs at 31. I think wide receivers very much on the table for them, assuming one of the top 4 or 5 are there. Zay Flowers, I think, goes in that mid-20s range. Giants seem to like him a lot. So again, we got the top 4 there. So we got to find another one, right? So yeah, I like Jalen Hyatt. He's certainly just I don't want to call him just a one-trick pony, but he has one very good trick, that's for sure, and it is the 9 route. I go back to that game against Alabama, 5 touchdowns. I mean, you don't do that against Alabama without without some talent on top of that speed. And he did disappoint a little bit in the 40. I don't have that in front of me, but he's not strictly a burner, right? And that offense is maybe not your typical pro style offense, but he still was able to produce there. So that's one guy. So part of this take isn't just that I think Jalen Hyatt might be a first round pick. It's that there are other guys that could be a first round pick. Peter Schrager recently posted a mock with Mingo out of Ole Miss in the first round. He's a guy that could fall in there. That seems to be a little chatter that NFL teams like him more than the draft community. Not sure if you've got anybody else there that you think could sneak in, but I think you've got at least 6 guys that are possible first round picks. And I think there's a lot of need, right? There's just most teams need wide receivers. So I think we could see somebody be pushed up there a little bit.
There are needs at receivers, or at receiver rather.
Bills as well.
Yeah. My thing here is we're talking about a lot of slot receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I think looking at this group, Quentin Johnston for sure, maybe Jordan Addison are the only guys that can kind of play outside in that top group. Nathaniel Dell measured in at 5'8", and just right there next to him, Josh Downs and Zay Flowers both came in at 5'9". So if we're going to talk about height, those guys are right there with him. I know there's been some talk about Josh Downs not making it into the first round because of his size. So if we're going to talk about Josh Downs and his size, you got to talk about the other guy that's 1/8 of an inch off of him.
Sure.
In Zay Flowers. Granted, I think Zay Flowers has a better tape.
Yeah.
But throughout this whole process and things that we've heard on some of these mock drafts is that this wide receiver group is moving down the board a little bit. Maybe they're not as highly rated as what the media has them. So looking at that, NFL mock draft database has JSN at 13, Johnston at 19, Addison at 21, Flowers at 26, Hyatt at 38. So, unless you just see a run on receivers early, or in the mid first round, I just don't think that we get there.
Don't get to 5 or to 4. I mean, we're on the same page with 4. Yeah.
I think 4 is borderline.
Yeah. I mean, mock draft database doesn't have another one after Hyatt until Downs at 50.
Yeah.
50 seems a little low for him for me, but those are guys that could sneak in. They don't even have Mingo anywhere close. I just, that's 5, 6, maybe 7 guys that could sneak into that 31st. If we had an extra pick, maybe I'd have a better chance here. I feel good about the 4 though. I mean, if the betting line is 3.5, I'm taking the over. The spicy take is that we're getting to 5.
Yeah, with these guys in the late rounds, I mean, we're talking about Buffalo, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Kansas City, even moving up a little bit, Dallas, the Giants, Jacksonville, Baltimore, the Chargers. What do these teams do? So it's certainly possible that we could see 4. I just, I would be very surprised if we're going to see 5.
The Green Bay, Patriots, Seattle, perhaps. Those are all possibilities, I think.
Yeah. And finally, my last hot take: the 2023 NFL Draft lacks premium trade value. So looking at this class, obviously a lot of the trades have been about the quarterback position, right? And assuming that Bryce Young goes first overall, we've heard some chatter about Houston moving out of that position, maybe Arizona moving out of that position. Then what is Seattle, Vegas, Detroit? What do some of these teams do? I think that if there was a player to be traded for, we would see a trade by now. So I think at this point we're looking at a draft day trade for quarterback, and I just don't know if there's a quarterback in this class that I, as a GM, would be willing to move up 4 spots, 5 spots, 6 spots, and giving away that capital for a guy that may not make it.
Right.
And you look ahead to 24, where you have Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., maybe even Bo Nix. I think that class has talent in it.
Yeah.
At that position. So if you're outside of, maybe those top 3 quarterbacks, I don't know if there's anything, worth trading for. And, even looking at some of these other positions, I love this class at corner with Gonzalez, Witherspoon, Porter, Deonte Banks. Maybe we see a trade there for one of those, but looking at some of these other positions at edge, with Lucas Van Ness there, Nolan Smith, Miles Murphy, in kind of like that mid first round range. Just doesn't seem like a group of guys that we might see a team draft for. And I know we're going to see trades during the first round. It always happens.
For sure.
But I don't know if there's premium trade value in this class.
So that was a really delicate way of saying this draft sucks. Right?
Yeah.
Like, legitimately, I'm not sure about the idea that the Cardinals would have already traded. The Panthers made the trade. I commend the Panthers for making that trade. It was a lot to pay, but you got what it appears that now is consensus QB1, right? It seemed like it was maybe Stroud, but now it looks like it's for Bryce Young. You got your guy, and the people. It's maybe even created a little bit of chaos. However, you did trade, future picks, including a future one that I'm not sure anybody else is going to trade in this draft. Your tagline here is right. The premium trade. Who's going to trade a one, especially next year's one, to get up for any of these other players? I mean, there's maybe, it's sort of like blue chip prospects. I mean, there's maybe 15 to 20 like first round picks, first round grades. But as far as blue chippers, right? It's Bryce Young, it's Will Anderson, Bijan, I guess.
I
Jalen
think
Carter,
you throw
if
a
you
couple
ignore,
numbers in there. Yeah. I think
Jalen
you throw
Carter,
in
if you
Gonzalez and
ignore-
Witherspoon.
yeah. If you ignore red
Carter's
flags
up there.
If you ignore red flags on Carter, he's certainly blue chip. And then, the top 2 corners. I'm not sure I'd put any of the tackles in there. I like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm not sure you put him as a blue chipper. So, it's short. It's not a great draft overall. It's just not. The tight ends are interesting. I don't know if I'd put any of them as blue chipper. Nobody's going in the top. There's no Kyle Pitts or anything. It's not the best draft. So I agree. Again, I agree with your tagline. I'd be surprised if somebody trades a future one for anybody in this draft, unless, I don't know. Teams need quarterbacks, right? So if one of these guys does fall, if Houston has created this chaos by not taking Stroud, I don't know if they take a different quarterback or they trade down or they just stick with Will Anderson or somebody. But if multiple quarterbacks here start to fall, somebody will jump up for one of them.
Well, and in these mock drafts, we've always talked about these quarterbacks, right? That maybe we're going to see a run on them 1, 2, 3, and 4. And
Right.
I think as this process has played out, we've seen that it's likely to go in a different direction now, right?
I would
So
agree.
yeah, so maybe now we're not going to see Tennessee move up from 11 up to 3 for a quarterback. Maybe you stay at 11 and you try to take a wide receiver or a corner or whatever you might need to do, offensive tackle,
Or Hendon Hooker, franchise quarterback.
QB3. I just don't know if I'm a GM that might be a little bit on the hot seat. If I'm willing to put my reputation on the line and my future as that GM on one of these guys that I'd have to move up for. I think I'd rather stay at my position, keep my draft capital, and take the best player available.
I think I would do it for Stroud, and I would consider it strongly for Anthony Richardson. And I definitely do it for Stroud if I'm sitting at 2 and I'm the Texans, and Nick Caserio's job's probably already tenuous. So I don't understand what the Texans are doing, but if they've done their evaluation and they decide they don't like the guy and they don't want to take him, then good for them. I hope you're right, because if you're wrong, it's quite the swing and a miss.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that brings up another good point. Is okay. Let's say that you don't like Stroud if you're Houston, and maybe you're not sold on Anderson or Tyree Wilson. So if there's a team that wants a quarterback, what's that asking price? And what is, what kind of value, not value, but what kind of, compensation are you going to get from a team? What kind of offer are you going to get? Because I think that offer may be, a little bit lowballed now that here we are, we hear that, you're not in love with CJ Stroud. And maybe you're not in love with these other guys. So, if I'm Tennessee or, maybe one of these other teams, maybe even Washington, if they're, looking at 16 of moving up, maybe I'm calling your bluff a little bit and giving you an offer that maybe you'll turn down, but it's not going to cost me an arm and a leg to move up.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can I think somebody would do it for Stroud, but as far as the draft lacking premium trade value beyond pretty much Stroud, or maybe one of the top defensive guys, I'm with you 100%. It's just, again, a delicate way of saying this draft sucks.
Yeah. I'm not going to go as far as to say that it sucks, but I think there's a lot of depth in this class and a lot of guys that can maybe develop into starters. But you talked about blue chip prospects before. I mean, looking at franchise players on either side of the ball, I think there's a handful of them, and that's it. And the rest of these guys, I think, are complementary pieces and nice pieces to insert into your system, but I just don't see anything more than that at this point. So that's it for hot takes, Sean. My 2 hot dudes.
I hope they were hot enough.
Some of them were a little spicy. I am Brian Lamb on Twitter at Brian Lamb _ISN, contributor for NFLDraftLounge.com, where we are putting out some 2024 content already and getting ready for next year. And that's where you can find all of my work. What about you, Sean?
Just at Sean _Balzer on Twitter. You can find my mock draft on NFL Draft Lounge. Hoping to post that Wednesday night before the draft.
All right. For Fired Up NFL Draft Podcast, we will see you guys next time.